Are you searching for a deeper understanding of your faith?
Inspiring Philosophy is your go-to resource for exploring the rich tapestry of Christian thought.
From biblical archaeology to philosophy of mind, we dive into the topics that matter.
Our content bridges faith and understanding, offering insights into God's existence and the reliability of the New Testament.
Join a community where faith meets reason and discover the answers you've been seeking.
Inspiring Philosophy, where faith meets understanding.
Erase the name. Now every idol sounds the same. A generation on its knees, begging comfort, killing peace. Oh, this is the price of pride, dancing while the truth just dies. We fear the cross, embrace the chain. Our freedom's just another cage. In the ruins, a whisper stands, scarred and radiant, pierced hands. The silence breaks, the dark retreats. The king returned and thunder breaks. Where the last light fading under broken skies, chasing meaning in electric lights. But grace still burns where shadows fall. The dead arise, he conquers all. Take one last breath before the dawn takes back the
Welcome. Oh, wait, shoot. I mean, welcome to a the Muslims.
The Muslims are gonna have a really fun time with this one. I think, guys. By the way, I just told everybody. I just told Ryan about how the Dawa dorks are sexualizing me. Man, I keep breaking character. For anybody curious about why I'm wearing a blue wig, it's because a certain philosopher who they can identify themselves if they want to recently came to me about Schellenberg's recent book and described it as if a post-COVID boomer who turned woke during the pandemic wrote a book about Christianity because they discovered gays and blacks exist or something like that. And so that's the title. Oh man. So yeah, we're gonna go over Schellenberg's new book. If you guys know, okay, dude, this keeps getting in my mouth. If you guys know John Schellenberg, he's known for his work on divine hiddenness. That's like the big thing people quote him for. But he recently wrote a book called What God Would Have Known, and we decided to review it. Ryan and I, we've messaged back and forth about it, and we both got really triggered by it. So yeah, we're just it's not gonna be a thorough takedown by any means, but it'll be fun. And I'll say one more thing before I finish my yap session. This book has actually been a topic of study for myself in general, because as most of you know, one of the things that I've been really trying to develop is a systematic way of arguing for the resurrection of Jesus, not having as low of a prior as skeptics would like to say. And so, unbeknownst to Schellenberg, he has actually given me a gateway drug, basically, to new arguments for a higher prior, because Draper used this book, and he used this as part of the background evidence for a new argument he made for a low prior for the resurrection. But the thing is, because this book and some of the reasoning that's employed in it is so bad, and rests on really bad interpretations of a lot of different data, we're actually able to reverse engineer it for a higher prior for the resurrection. Hence, a paper that I'll be working on. And Tim, have you decided? I'm not going to ask you, but Tim might actually be co-authoring it with me. Yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah, Tim's just aura farming. Who knows what he's looking at right now? Probably just a mirror. It's just
You got me.
All right,
man.
Ryan,
You got me.
I've been yapping for a while. Why don't you introduce yourself really quick for people that have not met you before? Because this used to be the Exploring Reality channel, and now it's Inspiring Philosophy. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I am Ryan Mullins. I have a PhD in theology from the University of St. Andrews and a doctoral habilitation in dogmatics from the University of Helsinki. I'm a lecturer in philosophy and theology at the University of Lucerne in Switzerland. I don't know, I do a lot of stuff on philosophical theology, and I'm currently recovering from some horrible sinus infection or chest infection. So if I start coughing violently, I'm not dying yet, but just roll with it. It'll be fine.
Fair enough. Tim, how are you feeling today? Dude, what are you looking at? What is this, amateur hour?
What you mean? What you mean?
My eyes are up here, Tim.
You want me to change the positioning of my camera? Is that what you're asking?
Oh, are you looking at? Is your screen down there or something? Oh my gosh, dude! What is with Gen Zers and being like, I'm not gonna look at the camera because that's the cool thing to do.
I'm just gonna look over this way the whole night.
Yeah, the whole thing, we're gonna just be like.
I mean, Sam, what do you want me to do?
I'm just messing with you. Man. I'm just feeling spicy right now. Okay, I'm feeling good. I had a cheat meal today. I had some Culvers. So.
All
right.
Oh, I get it now.
Yeah, some good Midwest right there. That's good.
Oh yeah. All right, Ryan, where do you want to start? How do you want to start this? We have this little document. I have a lot of things that I'll kind of maybe chime in here and there with, but yeah, how do we frame this for people?
Let's start with saying something nice about Schellenberg before we bulldoze through the book, I guess, because I do want to say something nice about him.
Okay,
yeah. So if you would have asked me, before reading this book, if you would have asked me who are the top 5 greatest living atheist or agnostic philosophers of religion, Schellenberg would be on the list. Like I like his stuff on divine hiddenness has been like a source of like lots of contemplation for me over the years. His approach to philosophy of religion, he has this thing where he calls ultimism, that we really shouldn't be trying to seek out God because that's already kind of like narrowing the scope too much of what we should be doing. We should really be like trying to search out ultimate reality, whatever that is. So we should broaden our approach to philosophy of religion. So in general, I think like a lot of his work is very creative, is very innovative, very interesting thinker. So I really do like his work. That's why I was pretty excited when I was asked to review this book for a journal. There we go. We said something nice about him. So
I actually no. Okay, look, I met Schellenberg
Yeah.
for the first time in person at a recent conference, actually, and yeah, I enjoyed being around him. He was a I would say interesting thinker is a really good way to put it, because he is innovative and he does carve new pathways. So I do really respect that, and I like that about him. So
yeah.
But now it's time to punch him. So
Yes.
okay, so what's the big idea? What's the big idea behind Schellenberg's book, Ryan?
Yeah. So in the past, he says he's just focused on like bare theism, like just, if there's a God, he's going to be like this, and here's why we should think God does not exist. And so for this new book, he's like, I want to do something that's more specifically aimed at Christianity. So he's like, here are 20 new arguments for why Christianity is false. And so that's kind of the direction he's wanting to go in. And all of these arguments are supposed to be related to something he calls human intellectual and moral development. So one of the phrases you see throughout the book repeated over and over again is, given what we now know to be true, this is what follows. So in the year of our Lord 2020, we learned all sorts of interesting things from Twitter. And so what we now know to be true, we can start in I've already poisoned the well against him. I'm sorry, but we can now develop different kinds of premises to generate arguments against Christianity. That's kind of the big idea.
Yes. Yeah. No, I that's a really good way of putting it. That Twitter line caught me off guard. Okay. Yeah. So when people have asked me about this book, would you say, okay, look, I understand that this is going to be a caricature and a little bit of a straw man, and a little rhetorical, but the spirit behind what I'm saying, I still think stands. The gist of this book is just a repeated amalgamation of arguments that somehow insert really controversial premise here. This controversial premise is true. This controversial premise is at odds with Christianity. Therefore, Christianity is not true.
I think there's a lot of that. I would say maybe about half the arguments are like that. And then I think the other half of the arguments are like insert premise that I think Christians believe, but Christians don't actually believe at all. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Have you read a theologian? And then he does read some theologians, and some of those theologians he reads, we'll get to that later. I want to be fair and say, yeah, he's appropriately attacking certain theologians who do say ridiculous things. So I think it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. Okay. Let's see. I have the book here and I have our doc here. You kind of went over this third point, the basic impression of the book and the arguments. Is there anything else you want to go in there? You want to say about that?
I guess there's several things that are going on where, when this is going to keep coming up in the discussion, the moral vision of the world that's just laying underneath this book is something that I find really confusing. So it's this kind of I don't know how else to describe it other than this very kind of neoliberal boomer mentality, and mixed with this kind of woke Puritanism. So it's just I don't know, at different points I really thought the book was so boomer it was going to just ruin the economy, and then other times it's just this very woke sort of stuff where I'm I have to walk on eggshells because I'm going to commit some sort of microaggression and I get canceled. So I don't know. It's this mix of there's no such thing as moral responsibility, but look, these people are really morally bad. And I'm which is it? What do you want?
Yeah.
So it's a mixture of this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And there's I don't know if you want to get into this now or not, but because there's a lot of this book is just very I can't, I'm trying to put my finger on how to like phrase this in a way that's precise. It's very, let's put it this way. It's very, you wouldn't hear a person in a third world country that is actually a victim of marginalization
Yeah.
and trauma and all this other stuff. You wouldn't hear them thinking or this way. Like their interpretation of the world would be completely different. Their interpretation of their own suffering, their own the way that people in higher classes and other races treat them would be interpreted through different lenses and all this other stuff. And I think that's like a very big weakness of this argument. In general, I would argue even in like a lot of atheological arguments that rely on axiological features that are isolated in Western American and Western liberal contexts, I think have a very big anthropological weakness, if that makes sense. And that is, it stems from a place of like, this is going to sound really postmodernist and might trigger some people, but I think I'm using this term a lot more responsibly than postmodernists would. It stems from a lack of lived experience. Do you guys understand? Do you get what I'm gesturing towards there?
Very
Like,
much so.
okay.
Yeah. Would you say that another way of putting it is it steps into the territory of being even unwise simply because it doesn't take into account the requisite kind of experience that would actually inform someone's analysis?
So I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to go as far as say like Schellenberg is not in a position to make this argument because he's not lived that experience. But what I'm going to say is that there is imprudent, there's imprudent handling of the data. Because actually, let's put it this way: you could actually just call this the fallacy of understated evidence, because it's not just that you're observing people that are marginalized and people that are being all the like hurt and all this other stuff. Right. There is also the data of how those people interpret the world that they live in and how what they do with that suffering and what they do with their lived experiences that you also have to interpret that like data through. And I don't think those two things are independent of each other. Those are dependent to each other, and you have to take those two things together. So I think like that's going to actually just throw a wrench in the whole entire project in of itself. Does that make sense?
I think so. I mean, I guess here's a way you could put it is, if you're going to play the game of identity politics and make a bunch of arguments kind of based on this stuff, then maybe actually check out lots of people's like different experiences and not say things that, well, we'll get into it. He says various things that he's like, women are this way or that way. And then various women who have like written reviews of the book were like, I found that really patronizing. So, so we'll get into that.
It's basically just like the polar opposite extreme end of the spectrum of the boomers that are like, well, women shouldn't be leaders because all the blood goes to the lady parts. It's
right.
Just take the irresponsible inverse of that.
Yes. It was just one of these things that I just felt like, I'm just like, man, we really lived through a dark ages. Like the last, like the 2020s was really just like an intellectual dark ages is what I just kind of felt in general. And then read this book and I'm like, yeah, this, I can see why this was published in 2024.
Oh man. Okay. Well, do you want to start with chapter 1?
Yeah, let's do that. So people have a clue what we're going on about. So Schellenberg wants to set up a thought experiment to try to get people's intuitions pumping in his favor. And so he asks you to imagine a guy named Ernest who is he's a young man, and he's studying theology at the University of Cambridge in the year 1820. And so what he wants you to do is imagine like Ernest comes across this book that's like got all these huge like groundbreaking intellectual and moral advancements about humanity that we now know in the year 2024, but that you wouldn't know in the year 1820. And so Schellenberg's like, Ernest would open this book and he'd learn all sorts of surprising facts, like the Bible was written by humans, and that Jesus was a Jew. These are groundbreaking things that you as a divinity student wouldn't know in the 1820s. Now, for anyone who has read the letters of Paul or the Gospel of Matthew, like I think these are going to be very shocking facts to learn that this was, like these were written by humans. Now, other things that Ernest would learn is that he would learn that the universe is actually very old, that evolution is occurring, that women and black people are equal, and that gay people exist. And that not only do gay people exist, but they're really not that bad. And I'm not like I'm being like slightly like tongue in cheek here, but this really is what's going on in this book that Ernest is supposed to read. And in Schellenberg's mind, he thinks that like Ernest would just be like, his mind would be completely blown. Like this is just like earth shattering sort of like information for Ernest. And then we in the modern day should also like just really be shaken to our core and start doubting that Christianity is true. But for me, like like what Schellenberg described was basically the education I got at Atlanta Bible College, like Christian Bible College. So like I don't know. I went to like a slightly conservative Bible college in the South, and I learned that like men and women are equal. It doesn't matter like if you're a slave or free or Greek or Jew or whatever. Like all the races are equal. I learned all this stuff. I learned that Jesus was a Jew. Well, I already knew that because I'd read the Bible before, and I already knew that humans wrote the Bible. But basically, like Schellenberg just describes like your just average generic like Master of Divinity education that you'd get today. And I'm like, why would this be earth shattering, and why does this like help motivate like the reader to like start getting on your side? So I was unmotivated.
Yeah, I mean, so I remember reading through this, and I honestly thought like my eyes rolled so far to the back of my head that I was like worried that I wouldn't be able to see again, because I'm just wondering what the point was at the end of the day. And I'm trying not to be a jerk. Seriously, I'm trying very hard. But what is the point of this? Because this is the caricature that you see the new atheist movement painting Christianity in, right? But like any reasonable person that's going to look at the history of Christian tradition, they're going to look at the history of like young earth creationism and these debates of evolution and all this other stuff. Like if you actually take an informed view on the history here, what Schellenberg is doing is just disconnected from reality, and you're just kind of taking this it's not even a diachronic. It's just you're taking a little snapshot of this particular moment or era of time we live in, and you're acting, and he's acting like this is the thing that like. While on one end he's talking about religious development and moral development, he's really just judging based off this little snapshot right now. It feels like, and it's very confusing to me.
I found it very confusing, but I also it's something I've seen before. So I thought the Cambridge the example of like a student at Cambridge was funny to me, because C.S. Lewis, who was a professor at Cambridge, he would look at these, he considered these arguments from the clock. So he had all these people that he was arguing against him and saying like, oh, Christianity, we can't do Christianity anymore because that would put the clock back. It would like put us back into the Middle Ages. And Lewis was like highly critical of this stuff, going like, no, stop it. And he did consider arguments also of people going, well, we now know that this is true, and so we can't go back. And Lewis would go, people always knew that. Like the earth is round. And he's like, yeah, people knew that for like forever. Like there wasn't a bunch of people thinking the earth was flat. Like that's nonsense. That's not made up history. And so like he was tackling all this exact same kind of rhetoric, like at Cambridge, just I guess about 100 years after this imagined Ernest student is supposed to be like looking at things. And then also this I didn't plan on talking about this, but like one of the things in the opening chapters, like Ernest learns that there's other religions. and I'm like, people have known that for a really long time before the year 1820.
The Bible talks about other religions.
Well, yeah, first off, the Bible talks about other religions. Second, like John Calvin, like, during the Reformation has a whole thing, like a whole section of the Institutes of the Christian Religion on like, how are we supposed to think about other religions? Like all these Jesuits are writing like manuals on here's how you argue with some Muslims. Here's how you argue with a bunch of Hindus. Here's how you argue with this or that. Like people have known for a very long time there are other religions. Like I was just like, this was even this like this thought experiment. I just thought this is really bizarrely naive.
Yeah, I do. One of the things I really struggled with in this first chapter too was like, how do I put this? It's almost as if, because there's no way Schellenberg doesn't know, right? Maybe the response, maybe if I write a book response or a paper response to this, right? The title would be what Schellenberg would have known.
Yeah.
Because like he should know that the caricature he's drawing is just I would argue irresponsible and not actually reflective of the traditions and the developments that you actually do see within the Christian church, right? More broadly.
That's been the reaction of other scholars who have read the book, but Schellenberg has a lot of kind of built-in responses in the book to that. And he'll say, well, yeah, sure, of course, I know, like, all these modern day like Christians, they've evolved. But like when you look at like actual Christian doctrine, like that's irrelevant. That you and the modern day have evolved to be more morally sensible. And I'm like,
but what is the actual Christian doctrine?
Yes,
that's the thing.
That's the thing, and we'll get into this as we get into some of these chapters here.
Awesome. Okay, so chapter 2. Unless you want to talk more about like chapter 1, there's not.
I don't have anything else to say on it.
Okay, yeah, because
I have something I want to bring up.
Yeah.
Oh, go.
Yeah, so I want to bring up. I forget. I always mix them up. I don't know if it was Almeida or Rhea who framed it as the Schellenberg problem. If you guys are familiar with that framing, Ryan, you actually brought it up initially, where you said something along the lines of Schellenberg will do this thing where he will tell us what Christians believe, critique those things, but then they're not actually things that Christians believe or hold to. And so he does this in his.
That was Ray. Yeah,
that was Ray. Okay, yeah. So he calls it the Schellenberg problem because the only person who has a problem here is Schellenberg himself. Either one of you weigh in on this. Like, how kind of prevalent is that in this text?
Okay, because I remember when Mike Ray was developing his book on like divine hiddenness, and I remember seeing him give the Gifford lectures, kind of going like, this seems like more like a Schellenberg problem than like a problem for Christianity as a whole or anybody else. And I'm like, yeah, I do think it is a personal problem for him. By the time I finished this book, I thought this even more so, that my expectations about the world and the expectations I think that Christianity has about the world are radically different than Schellenberg's expectations from God, like what God would do and the kind of world that God would create. So I think that's just an underlying theme throughout this whole thing, where I'm going, my expectations are wildly different from yours, what you think like God would do.
Why do you think, was real quick, fam, Ryan, why do you think that radical difference exists between you and Schellenberg? Like what do you think is, maybe just name one factor that you think. There's probably many factors. Of course, there's many factors, but what's one factor? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, the biggest one in my mind is I think there's this lack of patience with God and humanity, because one of the things I keep seeing throughout that's like I think underlying a lot of the arguments is God should just give us all the details right now. He should just like write this really detailed medical and ethical manual and hand it to us. And God should not create a world where we have to like figure stuff out on our own. Like God should have just like kind of like just dumped all knowledge into our head right now. That's like what I think really is an underlying theme throughout the whole book. Whereas I go, no, I think if God wants anything that looks remotely like humans, God knows that he's going to have to let them kind of figure stuff out on their own. They're going to have to develop and like kind of like, they'll need some grace, and they're going to need a lot of patience from God. Whereas I just don't see that from Schellenberg. So I think when it comes down to it, the arguments, I don't think Schellenberg would say this. So this is me now at this point, really just like psychoanalyzing. It sounds like God should not create anything that looks remotely like humans. Is what I really think a lot of these arguments are. And when it comes, so that's I'll leave it right there. Yeah.
I was going to say, I don't know if you know, years ago, I coined a name for a fallacy that I kind of observed happening here. And Than and I use it all the time, called the protological fallacy. Protology being the study of the things of the past. And I call it the protological fallacy because atheist philosophers like Schellenberg tend to have this assumption that goes unjustified, usually, or underjustified at most, that the ideal state of reality should exist from the start.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an axiology that's just assumed.
Yes.
But it's not assumed because they recognize, oh, I've stepped into the head of the theists, see that they are committed to this fundamentally. Now I'm going to take it on and I'm going to critique it. It's almost like a view from nowhere. It's just like everything should be immediately ideal. And I call it the protological fallacy.
I think this is right. And this is something you actually see throughout a lot of Western history of trying to ask, okay, so God's perfect. How does imperfection get into the world? And everybody's trying to figure out how to answer that. And you do get different kinds of arguments going, well, we should expect God to create a perfect world. I'm like, that's logically impossible.
Yeah.
And I've got a forthcoming chapter in a book where I'm looking at an argument that Graham Oppy and Evan Fales develop on this point, where they say God's options should only be perfect creatures. And I'm like, well, your description of a perfect creature is logically impossible. So God's only options are logically impossible things. And so imagine this for a second. So can God create a single electron, or maybe a single feather, or anything kind of trivial like that? Well, if you think that God can only create perfect things, the answer is no. And I'm like, so God cannot create an electron because it's not perfect? That's absurd. I mean, that's just absurd on its face. So I think it's different kind of expectations of what you think God would be up to, or what God would be aiming at.
I'll say, I'm going to add one more thing here, and hopefully this lands correctly here, because this isn't meant to be a slight to atheists on the whole or anything like that. What I'm about to say, I can understand how it could be. And Tim, you've heard me say this before, but I think that when it comes to atheism and atheological arguments, the majority of them are going to hinge on some sort of probability assessment of some states of affairs that you judge as not valuable or bad, right? And then you just ask, what's the probability? That seems really surprising on theism. And the thing is, one of the things that I after so many years of doing this, I've basically come to the conclusion that the way that you reason about the world and God's existence in light of suffering and disvaluable states of affairs, or alleged disvaluable states of affairs, I think it reveals a lot about just what you as a person value yourself. I don't know how you can get out of that indictment, if that makes sense. And so that goes back full circle into what you're saying, Tim, which is just kind of it seems fishy to me that the types of atheological arguments we're seeing lately in the Western modern times that we are in almost feel disconnected from the lived experience of the people that have suffered actually and what happens with them. And that goes full circle to what I've said before, which is kind of that's one of my critiques, I guess. But I'm going to stop ranting on that because I'm sounding like a pompous weirdo now.
Yeah, I just bring that up because I think it's really, I want the whole chat and audience to kind of recognize that these are some background principles that, are kind of infecting and saturating what seems like to be the entirety of this text and things like that. And these are important assumptions to track.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do some super chats real quick. It's because they're piling up. Cosmic says, I bet Ryan likes this song. Did you like the countdown?
Yeah, I did actually. I was like, we just listen to this for a while. We don't have to talk.
I wrote that song.
There we go. Is this AI generated or?
No. Well, yes and no. So I have an acoustic version of it. So I wrote a Midwest emo song.
Ooh, there we go. Mm-hmm.
So it's originally a Midwest emo song, and then I was like, I want it to be a metalcore song. So I just threw a raw recording of me doing it into an AI, and I was like, hey, make this a metalcore song, and it did that. So nice. I added it, I recorded some of my own riffs and all that stuff. That's not me singing. Wish I could sing that high, but I have too deep of a voice. So, because I'm a man. Chase, I'm back.
He's back.
Thank
He's
you
back,
for
baby.
telling us. Than is a woman.
It's great.
Than is a man. Man, all those Dawa dorks that are spending all these live streams looking at pictures of me shirtless while simultaneously calling me gay. Yeah. Glad you found a shirt that fits, Than. You know what, Randy?
Then be wearing extra smalls.
Dog. No. Okay, no, I'm not. You know what? I know you're just trying to trigger me, and it's working. Okay, so I'm still gonna say I'm still gonna have to explain things to you, Tim. I'm 5'7". I have 44-inch shoulders. Clothes don't fit me. Silence. Thank you for the IPA memberships. Long time no see, Tim. Dr.
I
Mullins.
just got off a call with him right before I hopped on here. So
Mullins for Sijuwadi Trinity debate.
We did one of those several years ago.
Have you?
Was that before the conciliar aspectivalism, or was that during?
I don't remember. I was living in Helsinki, so
Because I know that you guys just have clashed at each other. Like you guys.
yeah, because like I think that was I was living in Helsinki, so it would have been 2020 to 2022, somewhere in there.
Okay. That would have been before that paper. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, because like I think like he had only had like 2 papers out at the time, and yeah, we've had some like good chats back and forth and stuff. Yeah. So I think it would have been before some of this later work, and he's got some newer thing now too. Because I wrote a response in my Divine Time Maker book to some of his arguments, and I saw that he has a response to that, but I haven't had a chance to look at it, so I don't know what Josh is up to there.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that if there's anybody, like, we got to get you guys back at each other again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. So honestly, if there's anybody that I think is actually gonna give. Okay, let me put it this way. I have been, because like I hold to the monarchical aspectivals, the count of the Trinity, but I'm not against other models. You and I have had this discussion privately before, Ryan, right? Like,
yeah,
I want to defend orthodox models as much as I can, but that doesn't mean that I'm against non-orthodox models. But if there's anybody out there that I actually think can like poke holes in some of these models, I think it's you. Like,
I mean, I can poke some holes. I know Dale Tuggy, he told me he's supposed to do, because he's going to London sometime this summer, and they're trying to set up a debate between him and somebody at a Trinitarian. And I think it's probably going to be Josh, because Josh is down in England. I'm not in Scotland anymore, so he's not south of me anymore. Yeah, but so I think Dale and Josh are probably going to have a debate this summer. At least I hope they will. I think that would be a really interesting one.
Nice. All right. Where am I? Christianity is false because I'm a liberal. Have you apologized to your wife for being a man today? Yes, I have. I do that every morning, actually. It's the first thing that happens. All right, this was a compressed super chat, and I just got to find where it went. It says, woke folk are unfair to Christians about history. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, a lot of claims that you see from like the woke crowd, they're grounded in absolutely nothing. And so I'm just like, I don't know, just read any history. Don't even read a history book. Just read something. Like, I don't know. Because I think there's lots of things throughout history that you can critique. Like and the past is ugly, but you don't need to make stuff up in order to make it ugly. You just look at the reality of it. So I think there's lots of things about Christianity and go like, I don't like that. I'm like, yeah, that really sucked. You don't have to make stuff up. Like,
yeah, 100%. That's man. And it's sad because I think there's actually some like woke / like liberal sided scholars that I actually really respect that do bring good stuff to the table.
Oh yeah.
And then it's just kind of like, it's always comes with really, really bad stuff. And I'm like, God, just come on.
Yeah, just chill out. Why can't we all be just kind of like moderate a little bit?
Wait, Jesus didn't write Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John?
I see. Okay. When I came across that section in the first chapter, I stopped reading the book for quite a long time because I was like, I've got other stuff I need to focus on for my research. And eventually I was like, I have to finish reviewing this because I promised a journal I would write a review of the book. So yeah.
Columbus literally knew the earth was round. And ancient Greeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, last one before we go. Okay. Time to stop the book review and start brainstorming for the first episode of Dr. Mullins' detective show on equally valuable choices.
Oh, yes. That is something I'm actually working on this kind of stuff of like, I don't think there's a best possible world.
Yeah.
And so what would God do? That's a book I'm in the middle of writing.
Yeah. We talked about that. I talk about this in my Theodicy book too.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to Schellenberg. Chapter 2. This is his chapter on sin. So
yeah.
I'll just show this on screen while you bring up some stuff that you want to talk about on that.
So he's got this argument against the Christian doctrine of sin, because that's the way the book's kind of structured is going, here's this Christian doctrine, and here's why it's false. So he starts out the chapter by pointing out that Christianity claims Jesus is perfect. And then Schellenberg says that claim is problematic since Jesus called people Satan, Jesus compared different people to dogs, and then Jesus cursed a tree. So Schellenberg doesn't like that because I don't like, and I was just like, what is this? Like, and so this is where I felt like there was like these weird, like kind of boomer Canadian sensibilities coming out, where it's just like,
wait,
like,
is Schellenberg Canadian?
He's in Canada. I don't know if he's actually Canadian or not. But he's lived in Canada. I'm pretty sure he's Canadian.
I didn't know. Okay.
And so when I was reading that, I'm just like, what's the criteria here? Like, like, is it like, oh, well, Jesus would get thrown out of a Tim Hortons if he said that kind of thing? Like what's going on? Like, and so this is not even like one of his arguments that he has like premises for. He just says it, and then he moves into this actual like argument against sin. So I just thought this was hilarious, unintentionally hilarious, but anyway. So let's get into the actual arguments he wants to run, though, that he wants to focus more on. So I was just like, he cursed a tree, therefore he's not divine. Like, okay, cool. So
I don't know, like, honestly though, it's
I'm not straw manning. I mean, this is just
I'm
happens,
holding back my laughter right now. Ryan, you don't even know how like amazing that critique was. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
It's true. Like, look at these were the thoughts that came through. The first thing that came through my mind, and I know it, and I like this is one of those things that, because like I remember it. There's things that you remember your immediate reaction to when you're reading a book like this. Sometimes mine was, I put the book down for a second, and I was like, does Schellenberg like believe in like think like if theism is true, it's like a Teletubby god, like
maybe.
Like, or is it like the son with the baby face? Like, that's what he thinks like God would be. Like, what is happening?
That's this like, I don't know if it's like this politics of niceness or something, but it's just because it comes up several times in the book of just like, we just can't, like, Jesus wouldn't say, like, that's just not nice. And I'm like, I know, but like, if you're talking about child abusers and I use some strong language, oh no, that like, what's problematic about that? Like, like, I don't know. This is the overly sensitive kind of parts where I'm like, well, I don't know what you're like upset about. Like, if you've experienced true evil, and I'm sure Schellenberg has, and I'm sure Schellenberg himself has probably said some mean things, and I'm not going to judge him for it. I'm hoping he's not wringing his hands going, well, I really shouldn't have called that person that mean name. And I'm like, they were evil. I don't, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, so in this chapter, he has a few different things going on. Where do you want to start on this?
So let's get into let me summarize like the main argument here, though, because this is like one of the arguments he just kind of throws out there, but he's like, here's the main argument. So he wants to say that according to Christianity, human sin is the worst problem facing humans today. So that's like the starting premise. He doesn't give you any sort of like nuanced discussion of like what the biblical doctrine of sin is. He doesn't give you any sort of differing theological views on the doctrine of original sin. He just kind of, the best you get on an analysis of what Christians think sin is, according to Schellenberg, is that ordinary humans have self-oriented moral dispositions, and that humans have a pattern of performing morally bad actions. So like that's how he thinks like Christians should view sin. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot more nuance I'd want to put on this, but whatever, it's fine. Let's see what the argument is. So Schellenberg thinks that this particular understanding of sin is just false. So he argues that sin is not the worst problem facing humans. So therefore, the Christian doctrine of sin is false.
Hence my controversial premise.
Right. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, have you opened a newspaper at any point? Because like you might find this claim kind of surprising. So you might go, well, how does he actually defend this? Mm-hmm. And so in defense of this claim, Schellenberg says that most humans, they're really not that bad. There is not some sort of consistent pattern of selfish and bad behavior among humans. And so let me repeat that, because this is actually the claim. He says there is not some consistent pattern of selfish or bad behavior among humans. And this is a direct quote from page 41. He says, most human beings exhibit nothing worse than moral mediocrity. And then further justification is, given what we now know from psychology and from biology, determinism is true. And so there really isn't like a whole lot of moral responsibility going around in the world anyway. We're not really morally responsible. So we're all more like morally mediocre, except for women. Like women are like just like these like fountains of virtue. This is actually like, one of his examples. But we're not morally responsible anyway, because like determinism and stuff.
Yeah. I'm trying to find something he said in this chapter too that I found really uninformed. It was about tribalism.
He talks about, so he gives examples when he's like, there's morally virtuous people, women, obviously, and then a hunter-gatherer tribe. And he gives this example of like this hunter-gatherer tribe. These are the actual like claims in the book. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's what, let's put it this way. Why are women virtuous, according to Schellenberg?
He like cites some studies or something. I can't quite remember. I just remember like just going, excuse me, like what is the like and so then I'm
Dolores just control F. Hold on.
Yeah, look for that passage. Dolores Morris, she wrote she's a Christian philosopher. She wrote a review of Schellenberg's book for, I can't remember if it was Faith and Philosophy or the International Journal for Philosophy and Religion. Here's a quote from her when she's talking about this passage. So this is a direct quote from Dolores. She says, "I will mostly set aside my concerns about using women and a tribe of hunter-gatherers as generic exemplars of moral purity. To be frank, it feels vaguely patronizing to me." And knowing Dolores, like personally, I think her feelings are probably stronger on the situation than that. But the thing is, like, I know what she's talking about. Like, I experience this a lot. So, like, my little sister has Down syndrome. And when I was growing up, like the way people would talk about my sister were just like, oh, people with Down syndrome, they're such little angels, and it kept going on. And I'm like, I know you're trying to be nice here, but like, this is actually just really dehumanizing. You're not actually looking at my sister for who she is. Like, she's a brat. She's a diva. Like, she's got like, edges and a personality. She's not just this angel that just bursts forth into the world with like virtue. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, look, I don't remember. Wait, does Schellenberg talk about people with Down syndrome like that?
No, he doesn't. But I'm just bringing in like, this is an example from my own like personal life.
I was going to say,
seeing like, this kind of rhetoric, and I'm like, it is patronizing.
Like, look, in high school football, we had an assistant coach who, like, our school let help out. Mm-hmm. And we called him Coach T-Bone, and he had Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. And this guy was like the most vile dude you would ever meet.
Yeah, because he's like, a human. Like,
he called like anytime. Like, I have a distinct memory of this guy. I remember somebody, like, I'm getting up after a play is over in a football game, and some dude like just headbutts me as I'm getting up. And Coach T-Bone, the coach with Down syndrome, he's in his 40s. Like, horse collars this teenager and calls him a retard. Yeah. You said Schellenberg was talking about people with Down syndrome. I'm gonna call Schellenberg and be like, dude, I got a story for you, man.
Yeah, have you met anybody like this? I mean, that's the thing is like when I see these kind of statements in general, I'm just like, have you met like people like? And so he's saying these things about women. I'm like, have you met women? Like some women are great, some others are awful because they're human. Like what? It's just I just think it's out of touch with reality.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. Oh, man. There's so many funny women quotes in this. Actually,
there were quite a few that just made me kind of go like, I know you're trying to be like kind of virtue signaling right now, but it's not looking good. Like it's feeling kind of cringy here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in the interest of moving on, because there's so many things here.
Yeah.
What goes on from here?
So I guess let me say like something really quick here. Like what he's giving some examples of. Okay, so let me say this. I think there are lots of things in the world that are bad, and so he wants to later on he wants to praise feminism and he wants to praise the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm like, well, what's so great about those movements? And it seems like those movements are fighting things that are like bad. And if Schellenberg's like, well, sin's really not that big of a deal, like it's really not that big of a deal. I'm like, then what are these movements fighting for? How can you say they're virtuous? Like, so so again, there's this incoherent moral vision underlying the book. So, okay, did you find one of the quotes you're looking for?
No, yeah, this is the thing I was trying to find, because I remember just being like, Schellenberg, like in my mental discussion with Schellenberg, when I remember coming across this, I was like, did you even try?
Mm-hmm.
Right? From what we know today about the parts of the social history involving women's sexism and patriarchal social structures, we may get yet another part of the explanation for why Christian thinking has not been more influenced by evident examples of human goodness. If men have dominated through most of Christian history, as clearly they have, and if the culture generally has given men more power over things and not demanded self-denial from them, then we might expect to see more evidence of self-elevating or self-preoccupied desires which have humans seeking control over things or security in things, or turning things into idols among men. If you just look throughout, like, I see your face, Ryan. Like, on our main Inspiring Philosophy channel, by the way, like, we've covered this before. You guys have seen this, right? Like, the early church, let's put it this way. Just recently, Ryan, you might not actually know about this. Like, just recently, I have a paper in peer review on onomastics. Okay. Onomastics is study of names. And let me just give you one of the really interesting results about our studies. So we have over 50,000 names from 200 BC to 200 AD. We've divided them across geographies and chronologies. So we have like time frames, right? So we know what it looks like in ancient Egypt at this particular time, ancient Palestine in that particular time. You get the point. And we have them split across male and female names. And so the basic idea is like, hey, if there's a name distribution in the Gospels and Acts that fits what you would expect in ancient Palestine, right, that would lend credence, if you have a high p-value, to whoever writing the Gospels and Acts was situated in that specific time and place of the historical Jesus, right? And so the p-values that we got actually rate higher for the Gospels and Acts than even things like Josephus. Like the name distribution match is the strongest one out of all the tests we have. There is one place where we get something that doesn't match. And it's in early Christian literature in general, not just the New Testament, but early Christian literature in general. There is a mismatch in name frequency amongst female names in Christian literature relative to what you would expect to see. In other words, female names are overrepresented relative to what you would expect to see.
Right. Okay. That's really interesting.
And
yeah.
And so what we argue in the paper, and again, it's not out yet, but I can show you the copy. What we argue in the paper is, well, this might seem like it's actually really devastating to our case, but it's not, because on our hypothesis, the early Christian movement elevated women from a status that was seen as less than, because even like women in ancient Rome were oftentimes even deprived of
Right.
names. So early Christian women are elevated to equality status. Hence, you get an overrepresentation of female names in the early Christian literature, and you would actually predict for that. So, like, that's just one case example of how, like, what Schellenberg's trying to point at is just ridiculous.
Yes. So no, this is a good point because, like, okay, so because Ben Witherington, he's run these kind of arguments where he's pointing out what the Apostle Paul does, like the kind of rhetoric that Paul uses, where Paul addresses slaves first. He addresses women first before men, slaves before like the masters. So he's constantly doing these very subtle things to like balance the power or flip the power around in a way you wouldn't expect. Because it's the exact opposite of the way people would talk at that point. You would address the man first, not the woman first. Well, Paul's like, I'm going to do it the other way around. So it's all these kind of like really interesting subtleties that you see throughout the New Testament, and Schellenberg's just like overlooks all of that, and then a few times he'll like kind of address the issue, and he'll go, well, that's just a weird quirk. It's not really like the heart of Christianity. And I'm like, okay, according to who? Which I think gets us into chapter 3 because so yeah, I'll save that point for just a second here. So let's get into chapter 3 here. Yeah. So this is the chapter on spiritual helplessness.
Yep.
And so the argument's supposed to be like this, that Christianity claims that humans cannot be delivered from sin apart from Christ. Okay, what does that mean? Well, I don't know entirely, because Schellenberg doesn't let Christian theologians explain it themselves. Like at one point he quotes Karl Rahner, but then Schellenberg like dismisses whatever Rahner has to say about it as question begging. So he won't even let like Christians articulate their own doctrine in this chapter. And I'm like, cool. All right. So the best you get is that being delivered from sin means like you just kind of become a better person. And I'm like, I don't think that's what the Christian doctrine of deliverance from sin is all about. You know, I kind of thought it was like alienation from God. Maybe that's kind of a big deal. That's why you can only come through Christ. But I'm a Christian theologian, so in this chapter, I'm not allowed to like say those things because I'm begging the question.
Yeah.
So the argument goes like this: Christianity says you can only find deliverance from sin through Christ. Well, people can find deliverance from sin apart from Christ. So therefore, the Christian doctrine is false. And the examples he gives are feminism and Black Lives Matter. The like Black Lives Matter movement and feminism, they give you deliverance from sin apart from Christ. And it is, again, this is his argument. This is not me. Like, I'm trying not to laugh.
He's not joking.
Like,
he's not joking.
Yeah.
Guys.
But this is the argument that he gives. So you find deliverance from sin.
The effective altruism thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and effective altruism is another example. Like these kind of things that you get. And so I'm like, okay, so BLM happened, therefore Christianity is false. Is kind of the idea.
Tim, are you ready to take your Shahada? Your Schellenbergata? You muted.
Oh, there we go. Alrighty. What do you want from me?
I'm just wondering, are you convinced? Are you like, how are you feeling as you, because Tim hasn't read the book, so like, how are you feeling so far as you're hearing any of this stuff?
I mean, man, dude, like I'm so glad I can only live vicariously through you two. I'm going to skirt this suffering and just gonna kind of listen to you guys. From what I've heard so far is I love this because Than has this track record of finding himself reading works like this, and I don't know what he does to attract, but now he's like bringing like you into it too.
Mm-hmm. Whoa. Okay,
no, Tim's right, because there's a couple times you've asked me to do like, you got to do this reaction video with me, and then we come in and I'm like, this is garbage. Why did you waste my time with this video? Like,
I only report the truth, man.
Okay, wait.
Go ahead,
I want to defend myself here because remember, the only reason I came across this and was like, okay, I guess I got to take care of this is because when Draper was getting ready to present his paper on the resurrection at that conference, right? In order to help him, because he asked for feedback on the argument and everything, right? And in order to help him, I realized I have to look through Schellenberg's book. And then I was like, oh no, this book is interesting. And so I was like, I guess I have to keep looking through it, because I think it's chapter what Draper really uses is the big narrative argument in chapter 5. Yeah. And so that's how I got into it. I did not seek this of my own volition, okay? Because I also, let me put it this way. When Draper presented his paper, people were like fine with it, right? Up until the point that he used Schellenberg. I'm not even kidding, Ryan. If you were sitting there, you would hear a collective, oh.
I have heard this from
tons
so
of little
many
like,
people.
What?
Yes. I have heard this from a lot of friends who are Christian, who are atheist, who like all over the spectrum going, yeah, that was a weird moment at the conference. And I was like, huh, okay. You know, yeah, I don't know.
It was interesting. But okay, so what spiritual helplessness, what's the argument like he actually ended at the end of the day puts together here? Like if you were to string
it's you if you okay, so you cannot find so Christianity says you cannot find deliverance from sin apart from Christ. Well, you can find deliverance from sin apart from Christ. Just look at BLM. So therefore, the Christian doctrine of deliverance is false. I mean, that's the argument. And BLM's right there, like in feminism, and these are the examples he gives.
Man, I just there's tiny little things in here that I wanted, like, that you can nitpick too. Like,
Sure.
I mean, there are little nitpicks that I think are important nitpicks. Let's put it this way, right? Because like he says in the beginning of one of the sections about what's it called, Jewish salvation without Christ, right? He says something. He says Christianity does not own the idea of sin or deliverance therefrom.
Yes.
Historically speaking, Christianity got the basic notion of sin from Judaism, and then goes on to draw this distinction between Christianity and Judaism, that like there is a distinction, but then he doesn't like take the time to actually unpack and appreciate what this like really interesting relationship is between Christianity and Judaism. Because Christianity, for all intents and purposes, is in what I would argue, right? Like if Christianity is true, Christianity is just the fulfillment of Judaism, right? Where and it's so it's like what how are we framing some of these things, and like can we he could have been a little bit more careful with the historical data here is like my big complaint, I guess.
I think that's fair, but again, like it's one of these moments in the book where again I'm just going, yeah, I know this. I went to Bible college. You know, like I went to a conservative Bible college. Well, not like conservative, like, you know, like slightly like to the right of center, you know, except there's like some of them were liberal on some things. Like, I don't know. It's just like, it's a mixed bag. And so I'm just like, yeah, I know that some of these ideas were originally in Judaism because, you know, Jesus was a Jew, and he like, when you just read the Gospels, he's like preaching these things that other people were preaching, and it's kind of like right there in the Gospels. So I'm like, this isn't really shocking because I read the Bible.
Yeah.
But, you know, yeah.
He also I feel like low-key misuses N.T. Wright in Sanders with a new perspective on Paul a little bit. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I haven't looked at some of those debates in forever, but when I was reading some of those sections, I was like, okay, so like you've just discovered this debate, which is fine, you know, because he was doing other stuff. You research agendas. That's how it works. Yeah. Like sometimes you come to these debates 10, 20 years later. But he seemed to think these were like really interesting, important, whereas I've like, we've kind of moved on.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, what about chapter 4 then? If is that where you want to go next? Or
Yeah, let's do 4. Let's go through this one quickly, so we can get into the big narrative of chapter 5. There's a few things I guess actually want in chapter 4 here. So here's the big argument, I guess, of chapter 4. So this is on salvation. So this gets to something Tim asked me at the beginning, which is like, what do I think like is like the fundamental difference between like me and Schellenberg? And I'm like, there's this impatience, I think, with Schellenberg. So Schellenberg says Christianity proclaims that Christians are given all of the necessary and sufficient information needed to establish perfectly harmonious relationships with fellow humans in the here and now. So like God gave us everything through Christ to establish perfectly harmonious relationships right now. And then further, according to Schellenberg, this deposit of information should include statements. It should have included statements about the capacities of Black people and women, statements about the causes of same-sex attraction, statements that torture leads to inaccurate confessions, and statements about the causes of epilepsy. So this is on page 83 of the book. So the Gospels should have included all of that. Now, if you've read the Gospels, you'll notice, like, okay, like it doesn't talk about like those things. So what's going on here? So the Christian doctrine of salvation should come with a detailed medical manual of epilepsy. And since Christian revelation does not contain such detailed numerous statements about epilepsy and that torture leads to false confessions and so on, all of the salvific information humans need was not in fact provided through Christ. So the Christian doctrine of salvation is just wrong. It's just wrong. Like that's the argument.
yeah. What is your objection to this argument?
I've got a few, but like again, since I just I went to Bible college, I seem to remember some of the human authors of the New Testament saying very clearly that gender and race and class, they ought not to divide us because we're all one in Christ. I kind of remember some of the human authors of the New Testament saying these things. And then further, I do not remember ever thinking that Christianity proclaims that humans are going to find a perfectly harmonious life in the here and now. Like, I don't remember ever thinking that. Mainly because I remember the human authors of the New Testament saying over and over again that you got to like be careful of all these snakes and all these like wolves in sheep's clothing sneaking in. You always have to be aware of like false prophets. You have to be aware of like natural disasters and wars and rumors of wars. Like, and you have to constantly be engaged in the renewal of your mind every single day and run the good race until you finish it. Because this life is going to be hard. It's going to be awful. It's going to be ugly. There's going to be some good stuff too. But take up your cross and follow me. That's not a, let's sing Kumbaya and like, and it's all gonna be cool. Like that. I'm just like it's very different.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a already but not yet eschatology in the biblical corpus. It's almost like Jesus says, you will have trouble in this world, but fear not, for I have overcome the world. Right? That's a paradigm example of the already but not yet. Right? Like.
Yes.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, right? It's just kind of like, I want to like sincerely believe that Schellenberg has thought about some of these objections or something like that, right? Like, but he doesn't really give any good responses to any of these things, in my opinion. So it's just kind of like, what's happening here?
Yeah. So there's something different about this chapter compared to the previous chapter, because like, remember earlier I was complaining going, he wouldn't let Christian theologians articulate their own doctrines. That's different in this chapter. So he relies very heavily on a lot of white British male theologians from the boomer generation. And you might think like, why am I emphasizing that? Well, it's going to come back later when we talk about one of the other chapters. So he's relying on these white British male theologians, and there's this weird way that they talk that when I first moved to the UK in 2010, I was constantly going, what are you guys on about? And so And he quotes some of these people, like saying like it's only in the church that we find like justice and like flourishing, and it's only in the church where we see all this healing taking place, and it's only in the church. And I remember hearing this stuff all the time when I moved to the United Kingdom, and I'm like, the church is dead in your country. What are you talking about? Are you speaking in this kind of like metaphorical way to say like the church ought to be the place where social justice like is happening? It's not, but it's where it should be. Is that what you guys are trying to say? Or are you trying to like speak very hyperbolically to like motivate us to like, what are you doing? And sometimes like that's what's going on, but then other times some of these like these theologians, these British theologians, were so high on their own supply that they're like, no, it really is like it's only in the church where this stuff is happening. And I'm like, it's not. No one's going to your churches. You're selling off like the buildings left and right. Like, what are you talking about? So this chapter I think was different because Schellenberg's quoting these people saying that it's only in the church where peace and justice and all this is taking place, and it's like, well, that's just not true. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So I think if that's his main target, then this is one of the few places in the book where I'm like, all right, Schellenberg, you got a point. Like, like you got something to say here.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Yeah, I mean for me, when I remember reading through this and I was just thinking like, well, why are we just zeroing in on that? Like, because you could also find equal parts people talking about how the church is like not doing the thing it's supposed to do, and they're like, right. So it's kind of like, again, kind of fallacy of understated evidence thing happening here.
Yeah,
that it's just confusing.
Do you feel like it's understated, or you feel like it's overstated? What I mean is not that bit of evidence, but the converse.
Okay, like Schellenberg's looking at like things like the Oxford Handbook of like Systematic Theology, the Cambridge Handbook of like Christian Theology, and that feels like if you're trying to learn about Christian theology, that's the place to go. So he's going to the sources, and I'm like, I understand why you go to those sources, but like they're saying crazy stuff. Here, let me give you an example of like just so you can kind of see like what I'm talking about.
Okay. Oh, wait. You're saying those places are not the go-to places.
Well, they feel like they should, but then you read these people saying like it's only in the church.
I misunderstood you at first and then I was like, wait, Ryan's not actually saying that, is he?
No. I want you to understand like how bizarre the way the rhetoric is from this particular generation of British theologians. Yeah. So James Torrance, I remember I had to lead a seminar on this text for an intro to theology, and I was like, what am I supposed to say to these people? So he gives this argument. He says it's versus Unitarianism versus Trinitarianism, and he's like, Unitarian worship is boring, it's dry, it's lifeless, whereas Trinitarian worship, it's just so buzzing with life. The songs are like joyful and all this or that, and I'm like, have you gone to a Scottish church? Like, you're Scottish, like I know you. Like, I've gone to a bunch of Scottish like churches that they all believe in the Trinity. It's boring, it's dry. I feel like death is just sitting on my shoulder. What are you talking about? I've never been to a Unitarian worship service, but like, I imagine the music is just as boring as it is there. Like, are you actually think you're describing reality, or are you making like a normative claim? Like, what are you doing? And the answer is all of it and none of it.
Yeah.
And that's just confusing. And so when Schellenberg's reading these people, I'm like, yeah, I'm just as confused as you. So like, have at it, critique away.
Yeah. It's funny you think that I was literally this is not related, but I was talking with a friend the other day, and because I went to his church, and it's just like a white evangelical non-denominational type church, and they were playing worship music, and I move, you know what I'm saying? There's just music playing. And then I felt really uncomfortable because literally everybody else just
they're all just like
no, my church not be like that.
Wait, does your church move, Tim?
My church be moving.
What?
My church be moving, yeah.
Oh man, I can't wait to come to your church one day, bro.
So, Tim, what I would love is like for you to see like a Finnish church, because the churches in Finland, like I went to this charismatic church in Finland because they're the only ones open during COVID that were speaking English, and it reminded me of the church that I grew up in, because the church I grew up in, like you allow that woman in the front row to raise her hand up to here. If it goes above her shoulder, like she's showing off. What is she? She's showing off, you know? And so all these like Pentecostal Finns were just like, I'm feeling the movement of the Holy Spirit. Oh, okay, like keep my hand down. The Holy Spirit's moving right now. Give me a little bit more. You know? It was hysterical, absolutely hysterical.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah,
Talladega Nights.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Are you ready to move on to we just did salvation, so that was 4 on the divine Jesus.
Yeah, let's do this one because this is one like that's relevant to some of the stuff you're working on. So he's got this argument that Jesus is not divine because of something Schellenberg calls the big narrative. So the big narrative is, quote, deeply problematic. So this is on page 98 where he says it's deeply problematic. So the big narrative, so the argument is that no good God would become human and endorse the big narrative because a good God would know the great harm that the big narrative would cause to future generations. That's the big argument.
Yep.
What is the big narrative? Well, according to Schellenberg, the big narrative says that God chose Israel to be a special group of people. The big narrative says that bad people do bad things and God must punish them. And the big narrative says that it's very easy to identify the bad people and it's very easy to identify the good people. And the bad people are entirely to blame for all of their actions, and they just should have tried harder. And then according to Schellenberg, given what we now know today, this big narrative is overly simple and it's just deeply problematic. And then further, according to Schellenberg, the big narrative has an unsavory depiction of God because it says God is jealous. And so again, I'm just like, okay, this is some of this like Canadian sensibilities coming out here. But so Schellenberg's argument is, given what we now know, God would never endorse the big narrative. So we should infer that God did not, in fact, endorse the narrative. So that means God did not become incarnate in Jesus Christ and endorse the big narrative.
How you feeling, Tim?
So the big narrative has.
By the way, wait, Tim. This is the argument that that Draper uses.
I remember you telling me this. Yeah. Okay, so the big narrative. There are some consequences of the big narrative, that being some negative value.
I guess. I mean, yeah, because it's problematic, you know, because you can't just say people are bad and that God's going to severely punish them. That's just bad. You shouldn't say those things. And then also, like, okay, no one has moral responsibility anyway because determinism. That's in the mix too.
So, does he fill out the eschatological edge of this big narrative in order to properly assess the actual value of the whole?
So I guess the closest thing you're going to get here, from what I can remember, is like part of the eschatology is some people are going to go to heaven, some people are going to be like really severely punished in hell, and what we now know is severe punishments are just bad. That's just bad.
But okay, so severe punishments is bad. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now, ready? So now we're going to move from that bad. So then the therefore is, what is therefore?
Therefore is God would not endorse the big narrative. And you Christians, you think that Jesus became incarnate and Jesus is endorsing that big narrative. God wouldn't do that. So he didn't become incarnate. So Jesus is not divine because Jesus wouldn't support this.
So this is what happens in my mind, which is I didn't hear a bridging principle there. So I'm pressured to say that's a non-sequitur.
I can see why you think that, because there's a lot of times where I'm like, okay, but like the idea, bridging principle? Not that I can remember, like a bridging principle. Like Than's got the argument.
Yeah, like, I got the syllogism.
Okay, like the exact syllogism book up here. Like so like make that a little bit bigger. Yeah.
Is it too small? Is that better?
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you see that, Tim?
Yeah. Let me just do this right here.
So the big narrative is a narrative about God and humanity that in the version popular at the time of Jesus, centrally featured. Okay, wait. I'm going to stop right there. That clause is very important.
Yes.
In the version popular at the time of Jesus.
Yes.
There is a mistake here that he makes. Well, there's actually many mistakes that he makes. One, because he uses like the Dead Sea Scrolls
Mhm.
and he tries to interpret them, and I think does a very bad job at that. And basically, okay, so like, but let's take a step back for a second.
Mhm.
Let's just say he's right in his interpretation of the Hebrew Bible and the
Mhm.
Dead Sea Scrolls and the Second Temple literature. Okay. The mistake he's making here is, hey, I've interpreted this Second Temple literature in the Hebrew Bible this particular way. Let's just grant that for a moment. The thing is that the message of Jesus is not what he interprets the Hebrew Bible and the Second Temple literature to be. It's quite the opposite. Like, because basically, like, what he, I don't know if you remember this, Ryan, but like one of the things he tries to do is he tries to do this whole social psychology thing too with it, where it's like, well, this reinforces the in-group and the out-group stuff and yada yada yada. And it's like, well, no, okay, even if you're right about your Second Temple interpretations, that's all that stuff, Jesus's message does have in-group out-group stuff, but it's not horizontal in-group out-group stuff. It's vertical in the sense that humanity has made themselves the out-group, and that despite that, through Christ, we have an invitation to become the in-group with God's family. That is the interpretation, and that is the big narrative, that if God becomes incarnate and then as Jesus and does what Jesus does, that he is endorsing. That is a very different big narrative than what Schellenberg is bringing
But
about.
would Schellenberg say, would you say that's the popular version at the time of Jesus in that correction? Or would you
No,
just say
I wouldn't. I would say he's wrong. I would say he's wrong about how he's interpreting what the big narrative is at the time
but
of
would you
Jesus
still
in the
keep
first
the
place.
popular?
Like
Say
a bunch of, so like, is it true that like a bunch of people at that time period are saying things like this?
Yeah.
Well, let's precisify. Are we
So what I'm
saying,
asking is, are you saying that's the correct version or that's the popular version and he just got the popular version wrong?
of how people interpreted Jesus or the Second Temple literature?
So it's reading here.
Mhm.
The narrative about God and humanity in the version popular at the time of Jesus. So is your correction you're giving, are you saying, no, Schellenberg, that's the wrong popular version, here's the right popular version, or are you saying something else?
No. I'm saying this framing in of itself is broken.
So so premise one's implausible because the framing is just wrong.
Yeah, okay, because what I'm saying here is, okay, one, there is an equivocation between the big narrative, if we're going to use that language, right? There's an equivocation between the big narrative that would have been popular at the time of Jesus and the big narrative that Jesus is teaching.
Yes.
Okay, does that make sense so far, Tim?
Oh yeah, I'm on board with that.
Okay. So if we disambiguate those two, then now here's the question: what is the big narrative that's popular at the time of Jesus? I'm disputing, first of all, that Schellenberg is right about this. But even if we grant that he's correct about it, the conclusion doesn't follow, because what has to be included in the first premise is the big narrative that Jesus teaches. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was like my big thing. Like, I remember, like, I felt really weird about this, Ryan. But like I was kind of yelling at Schellenberg about this. Not Schellenberg. I was yelling at Draper about this.
Yeah. I thought it was, I just thought it was weird because one of the defining features of like Jesus's ministry is to say, well, you have heard it said, whatever phrase, but truly I say unto you, so Jesus is constantly correcting things all the time. And so I'm like, well, you look at the Gospels itself, if there is this thing called the big narrative, Jesus is constantly poking holes in the big narrative. That seems to be a big part of Jesus's message. But then also when I just look at the Old Testament's not like this really like clean cut, neat sort of thing, because the Old Testament authors are like disagreeing with each other on all sorts of stuff. And so I'm like, there's a plurality of voices here critiquing each other. So I just don't think there's this really simplified big narrative that's being endorsed in the Bible.
Mhm.
And and then when I look at the way like Christians, like when I look like throughout history, like the way they've looked at stuff, they also don't think this. Like so let me just like look at one point. So one of the points is, according to the big narrative, it's really easy to identify who the bad people are. It's really easy to identify who the good people are. Do you see that in the Bible? And the answer is,
I see quite the opposite. I see warnings from
yes.
warnings from God about how
Yes.
easy wolves can come in, and they're in sheep's clothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's all
Yeah.
these warnings about false prophecies and like all like false prophets, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, if it's really easy to figure out who the bad guys are, the good guys are, then why are we going on about all these warnings? Why is it that like the devil comes like as like an angel of the light? Like, and I thought it should be super easy to identify him according to the big narrative. But like, so I just found this really ridiculous because it just doesn't look like anything I see in the Bible itself.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much to say on this, but I'm gonna not go on a yapping spree about it. Man, I have a lot to say though, because he also just like points to the future contingent truths too in this a little bit too, right? Like about all the harm he thinks Christianity has caused and all this other stuff, and it's
Yes.
just kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen our work on this, right? But it's it's just it's revisionist history to say that Christianity has been harmful for humanity.
Yeah.
So
I was kind of thinking that actually, because these are the kind of things that I don't feel the need to talk about when I'm doing like apologetics or something, because I'm just like, it's not my area of interest. I already had a basic education in history, so why don't you guys go get one? But then I see like you and Mike and Tim and like you addressing like all these like TikTok videos. And I'm like, man, people are not getting a basic education in history. This is important.
no,
And then when I was reading through like kind of this stuff, I'm like, oh goodness, okay, maybe this is really important that people, because now again, like what I said earlier, like, you know, history is ugly. It is. But you don't need to make like stuff up or simplify the narrative so much in order to make a case that like bad things happened in the past. You could look at the good and the bad as they actually happened.
It is what it is. I mean, I'll just put it this way. I'm having a lot of fun formulating my response to Draper and Schellenberg. Well, so that's a good thing that comes out of this, right? It's a defeasible evil.
Yes.
Let's do some super chats again real quickly.
Yeah, let's do some super chats. Yeah.
Where were we? There we go. Do you think an Augustinian view of original sin taken myopically led to American fundy parenting model?
Oh. I have heard sermons about like you hear your baby crying. Well, that's like it's like selfishness. Like that's like an example of original. I have heard these things.
Oh, I came from a church where this is years ago. I've left that church. Where they had a pastor come in, and he was telling us was supposed to be a funny story about his daughter who's like 6, who likes to yell out "poopy" during prayer. And he's like, yeah, you know, this is just evidence. I'm like, and he wasn't joking. And I'm just like, whoa.
Wait, really?
No, he wasn't joking.
Man.
Like for real.
Yeah. His daughter saying "poopy" during prayer. He's like, this is. He thinks this is like that. That this is an evidential chip for
original sin. Wow.
Yeah.
I would think it's evidence that God's got a really good sense of humor, but yeah, I don't know. That's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I think this could be part of the explanation for the parenting model. But then when you do like historiographical like sociology, it's weird, right? Because you're gonna have like multiple things that are gonna be explaining these things, right? So for instance, like you're gonna have Puritan theology that's gonna probably get in the mix of this. You're gonna have things that John Calvin says. What's it called? There's an R word, something revivalist Protestantism,
Oh, okay.
that movement, like
Sure.
a lot of those things are going to be part of what mediates, I guess is the right word, a lot of this American funded parenting model that you see. There's gonna be other things in there. Like it's actually really interesting. Like it's really sorry. I'm thinking out loud right now. I'm just kind of putting pieces together, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean it's part of the puzzle, if that makes sense. Hunter gatherer tribes steal from trees. Checkmate atheist. The funny thing is, like, Schellenberg uses Jesus cursing the tree. So if you're doing something mean to a tree,
that means Jesus
it
is
tracks.
not divine.
It tracks.
That is actually so amazing that this person.
I love it. I love it.
Oh my god.
Oh, that was funny, man.
This is one of the best comments I've ever seen. Actually,
that
this is being saved for
QED. Is Dr. Mullins the one Jake brags being in a footnote?
I got a footnote to Jake. Yeah.
You taught Jake.
So yeah, Jake's one of the students in my master's program right now. He's working on his thesis. He's being supervised by I think Rudolf Ulrich, who's like a pretty big name in Islamic theology or in philosophy in Europe. But yeah, Jake pointed me to this this hadith that says you should not curse time since Allah is time. And that kind of fit with like some of the stuff I was working on, where like I was looking at these views where people say like time is an attribute of God. So yeah. Jake gave me some interesting feedback on that on an earlier draft.
Nice.
Of that.
Yeah, I like Jake. Him and I used to not. Well, I wasn't mean to him. He used to be a little ferocious with me, but he's chilled out with me recently. I think because he realized I'm not like a WWE apologist, and I actually care about like what's happening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Charlie, for the $20 super chat. Bark Zaddy. Man, I'm not beating these allegations.
No, not at all. Never will.
This is a very circular question begging logic. He's probably speaking about Schellenberg's arguments. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Schellenberg a postmodernist, or is he just adopting their current ethical stances? I don't think
No, because like he's like a hardcore analytic. Like he's a realist about like truth and morality and all these kind of stuff. But that's what I just find so bizarre about this book is I can see why you'd go, is he just adopting like a lot of like homo ethical stances? And I feel like halfway through the book, it does sound like he's doing that.
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, let's move on from the big narrative. Did you want to? How much time do you have left? What are we at?
I'm gonna keep going.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about like chapter 6 because it's just like the Holy Spirit doesn't teach 2020 Twitter narratives, so therefore Christianity is false. I mean that's not the actual art, but it's kind of close.
I have a confession. I actually skipped this chapter the first 2 times I read the book because I was just so annoyed because this is like because you give a category of Schellenberg trying to argue about what Christians believe, but Christians don't actually believe it. In chapter 6, just riddled with like, where do Christians say any of this? Like, there's some things in there that Christians believe, but there's some things that I'm just kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
the Holy Spirit didn't tell you about epilepsy, so therefore the doctrine of the Holy Spirit's false.
Yeah.
And
I'm like,
why should the Holy Spirit tell me like a detailed medical guide about like why should I expect that?
Yeah, this sounds like atheist TikTok university stuff. So, good. I'm glad you want to move on from there. He has these 2 chapters on Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so there's one kind of like argument in this chapter that I thought was very interesting, and I think you can kind of flip the argument around on him. So here's the argument. So God would never allow any sort of revelatory process to be influenced by the patriarchy. So this is the claim. And you're like, why? Well, the influence of the patriarchy that might cause later generations of humans to doubt the revelatory process. So, and this is actually like, again, this is the argument. I'm not strawmanning. So let me put the argument in a slightly different way. So God would have known like that sending the Christian message out into the world, that would cause a lot of harm. He would know that. And so God would have known that allowing the process of revelation to be influenced by male dominated voices, that would be a source of doubt for later generations. And since God would have known all of that, God would never have allowed the Christian message to be revealed in this way. So we can infer that God did not, in fact, allow the Christian message to be revealed. And then given what God would have known, we can infer that God is not the source of the Christian message. So that's kind of the big argument that you find in like chapters 7 and 8. Like it's one of the arguments you find.
Yeah. So I find this to be very problematic because I feel like I could also just run an inverse argument.
Mhm.
And you could go something like, well, God, you could say something like this, right? Well, women were the first ones to, learn about the empty tomb of Jesus, and they were the first ones to actually like witness it and all this other stuff. And God would have known that, like in an ancient world, women's testimony would be deemed as unreliable, and so He wouldn't want women to be like the people to actually like proclaim such an important event, the first ones to talk about it, yada yada yada. So it's like, so He wouldn't reveal Himself in a resurrected state to women. But it's like that seems weird. That seems like that something's not tracking there, right?
Yeah.
When I'm saying this, and what I'm trying to get at is just kind of like, I don't know what the fallacy would be called here, but I mean, I want to hear what you have to say, Ryan.
I've got a bunch of different thoughts. Here's one. So the criteria is I'm not going to reveal myself in any way that some generation might find problematic.
Yeah.
God's coming into the world going, you're all a bunch of sinners. I don't think He really cares about offending people. Like He's just coming out the gate offending people. Like, but Jesus got nailed to a cross for a reason, Like he's pissing people off left and right. So I don't think that's really the main concern is like, oh, I don't want to like ruffle any feathers. So I just think that's just ridiculous. Here's the second thought. And this is so earlier I made a big song and dance about how Schellenberg focused so much on white British theologians, male theologians. So I think we can run a parody argument against Schellenberg and argue that Schellenberg did not actually write this book. so hear me out here. So you might find it curious that Schellenberg relies so heavily on male theological voices, all while ignoring the many female voices that claim to have found liberation through Christ. Surely Schellenberg would have known in advance that people might find this problematic and thus doubt the argumentative process of this book. And since Schellenberg is a wise man, and I actually do believe that, because I've read his earlier work and I know he's a wise man. So since Schellenberg is a wise man, surely Schellenberg would have not allowed such a thing to happen. So given what Schellenberg would have known, it is safe to infer that he would not publish a book that's so male-dominated. So we should infer that Schellenberg did not, in fact, publish a book that is so male-dominated.
Yep. I like that. That's a good way of doing that.
So I don't believe he wrote this book. I don't.
I'm just thinking, man, I think you put that really succinctly. I like that. Tim, what are your thoughts? Like, you're just kind of vibing as you listen to this. Do you have anything?
I've been having a great time. Yeah, it's been fun just kind of listening to how he's kind of progressing his argument there, and I think that it's going to be one of those situations where it's going to be persuasive or look like it has a lot of force to people that share the majority of his sympathies and stances already going in. I think that this book is going to be something that they would appreciate. I think about a lot of the, Ryan, you talk about like the TikTok
Mhm.
scholars and everything, but there's so many like, older white evangelical millennial women who would just eat this book up.
Yes.
Um, and I think that they're the type of people that would, really like this book. But as far as argumentative rigor goes, there just seems to be plenty of places where one can actually offer critiques that are actually worth looking into. Not everything's just flatly plausible, as he wants to make it out to be. And so, like my thought earlier, I mentioned, like, oh, this sounds a little bit like a non sequitur if I don't see like a really like a bridging principle, and I haven't read enough yet to see if he doesn't. Maybe I can, I can reconstruct it somewhere out of it.
Sure. Yeah.
But
No,
my
I
thought.
like I like how you identified what the audience would be that would find this plausible, because that was something. I mean, okay, so this is published by Oxford University Press, and
Mm.
Oxford University Press does not make affordable books. Like, like they're always like $100 and stuff. Like, you guys know this, because their business model is very particular. It's not geared towards the popular like world. And when I'm reading some of this stuff, I'm like, this is probably fits better with like the evangelical crowd. So you should have published with somebody that's going to make a cheap paperback that's going to try to sell at the airport, because everything I'm seeing from a lot of atheist and agnostic and theistic scholars, they're not happy with this. They're not buying
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I feel like his audience is somewhere else.
Yes.
I was going to say,
right.
what Schellenberg should have done is reached out to TikTok evangelicals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even kidding. I like,
yeah,
Tim. I don't know if you're still on TikTok or not, Ryan. I'm barely on there anymore, to be honest with you, because I just,
We're trying to
my
work on
blood pressure, my healthy blood pressure levels.
Yeah.
But I can see so many of the TikTok atheists running this argument, like because eventually he has what I think it's like a 18 premise argument. What is it? Yeah, 18 premises where he kind of puts all this stuff together.
Yeah.
Right. And I can just see like a TikTok evangelical using this.
Mm-hmm.
Which
yeah, like Ryan, I don't know if you saw the IP video that they did. I think Mike responded to it, but there's a guy that all my followers are sending me, and he's just like some regular dude with a phone. So it's just a guy with a phone, and he's all like, I'm about to do something ambitious. I'm about to advance an argument against Christianity that is going to put my name on the map. No one's heard. And he just runs the most bare bones basic argument from imperfection.
Yeah.
And like why would God create? And I'm like, yo, if that's still like new to them, dude, if we drop Schellenberg's argument in there, oh my gosh,
dude, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make. I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna be like, hey, TikTok. I'm gonna make a reel like, hey, TikTok atheists. Okay, your arguments suck. I'm gonna show you a set of arguments that still suck, but they're better than what you're using, and I'm gonna show them Schellenberg's new book.
See how they react. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. This is the response I would anticipate. What would you know? You're just a Christian. You don't know what a good argument against Christianity is. If it's good, you wouldn't be a Christian. I don't know why I'm using a Dawa voice right now, but
yeah. So, and Ryan, I bring that because like problem of imperfection in creation, or that's your thing, but people are still bringing it up online like this is news.
It surprised me that this kept coming up online, because I did see that video. I just was working on it because it was part of this bigger project of like, why would God create it all, and why this particular universe? And I saw like some atheist arguments that, like one from Graham Oppy, but I know Graham Oppy doesn't actually think too much of that argument that God has to create perfect creatures, because he's got another paper where he argues the exact opposite, that like there's just no best possible world, so we shouldn't expect God to create that. So it's just Oppy just having fun with arguments. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. We can have fun with arguments. But then when I kept seeing all these, and I thought it was kind of like a selfish thing for me to like work on that project, because it's just something I want to know. And then when I see all these videos on TikTok, I'm like, oh, people actually do want to know an answer to this. Well, that's good. So that makes me feel better that I spent so much time working on it. But also I'm like, people are taking some of these really silly arguments seriously. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh man. All right, I should figure out how to write a popular version of this book very fast. because this is bad. This is really bad.
Yeah, I'll say this. This book, how do I word this? What Schellenberg did, and Tim, you've heard me say this before. One of the things that Schellenberg's book has done, at least, is I feel like it's given people like me the permission structures to actually put out some of the new arguments that I've been wanting to put out for a while. If you're picking up what I'm trying to put down, Ryan, because it's like now if I try to make an argument that like for Christianity from a bunch of these different aspects that I've like been studying already for a while, and I already have the arguments in the back of my head, I've just never really made them because I didn't want to deal with like people being obtuse.
Yeah.
Now I can just be like, well, guess what? Like Schellenberg, your boy Schellenberg is using the same structure of argumentation. He just did some really bad interpretation of some data, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if there's anything that I'm like actually thankful for in this book, it's that. Like, that sounds really tongue in cheek, but it's not supposed to. I actually am thankful for it. Like, I think it has progressed the dialectic in a weird way.
It could. I just don't know. Like in the philosophy of religion crowd, I don't know how much attention this book's going to get because a lot of people were like, oh gosh. Like, cause I heard about all those reactions at Purdue when that happened. And I'm like, man, kind of wish I was there. Cause I love those like sort of like dramatic moments. I think they're funny. So I don't know how much traction is going to get, but you're right. It does give you permission because you can go like, no, I'm addressing actual arguments that people have. And I didn't expect these kind of arguments to happen, but if Schellenberg's not the only one who's going to run these kind of arguments, I mean, you guys see videos of people doing this all day long, so it's worth addressing.
Yeah.
And I just didn't expect that. It's one of those things. Okay, so here, if I'm going to sound like a boomer, I'm going to be like, man, the American education system's really falling apart, and then I like see all these videos like running these same kind of arguments, like, man, this is just a testament to how far we've fallen. And back in my day.
All right, Ryan. Well, while we because we're getting close to finishing this out. So yeah, the last chapter is unless you want to do chapter 9, because it's basically just divine hiddenness.
It's just divine hiddenness. I don't think there's nothing to say.
For anybody that's like, what the heck, like what? It's like. I'll cover it a different stream, okay? Like,
okay. Let me summarize real quick. So this is gonna be a snarky Ryan, because like
we're sick of this argument at this point, guys.
So, like, if God like exists and he loves you, he's gonna make himself like maximally transparent to you all the time. Like, he's just like the full glory of God's gonna be known to you like every single moment of your conscious existence. And I'm like, what makes you think you could handle that? Like, you can't even handle like a cocktail party for a few hours without getting overstimulated and need to go home and like sit by yourself for a few hours. You think you can handle the full presence of God? Like, what are you going on about? Like, stop it. Just like look in the mirror for a second. I don't think you could handle it.
No, 100%. And also, like, if God was like immediately obvious, like, I probably wouldn't be doing the stream.
Well, when you look at so Isaiah, let me rant about this for just one more second, I guess. Look at the story of Isaiah. When Isaiah, the prophet, is called in the book of Isaiah, I guess it's written by a human. So like, man, this is mind blowing to me. What am I supposed to? Anyway, so the prophet Isaiah gets called, and his reaction when he like sees the presence of God, I think is a very human reaction, which is basically like, oh shit, like I'm like a sinner in front of like this really holy God. Like, what do I do? He freaks out. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like the right reaction. So why? So I just think that, like, I don't know why I should expect that humans at this stage in our evolutionary development and in our own like individual, like cognitive and moral development, why do I think I can handle a big like encounter with God right now? Because I can barely handle an encounter with like, like a rude barista at Starbucks. So
yeah, no, 100%. And I would also, I will say this one thing really quickly too. Tim, you've heard me say this before. I don't know if you've told you, it's part of my theodicy. I make a distinction between, I talk about like pain management as a broad category. And I make this distinction between like virtuous pain management and like hedonistic pain management. And when it comes to hiddenness in general, like I think this is an important facet, right? Because like you can have hiddenness for like the insofar as like you have a non-resistant non-believer, and then you can have hiddenness insofar as like I'm going through a really tough time and like just having a religious experience would make me feel better, kind of a thing, right? And it seems like, and there's a whole bunch of psychology that I go into when I argue this, but the basic idea is like people that are looking for religious experiences for either of those cases, I would argue are actually like falling within the category of like a hedonistic pain management rather than like a virtuous pain management type of thing. And so you might actually make this prediction, given human psychology, that God wouldn't give you these experiences because you wouldn't expect a good God to actually endorse hedonistic pain management over virtuistic pain management, if that makes sense. So there's tons of things to think about when it comes to this topic. But yeah. Okay, well, chapter 10, what God would have known. 18 premises.
18 propositions that we now know to be true.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this?
So so he runs this final argument after he goes through like these 18 propositions. And so there's this one argument that I thought it's interesting, at least. So he says God would never allow a false salvation plan to enter into the world, especially any sort of false salvation plan that claims God is endorsing it. So like God just wouldn't allow that. He wouldn't allow any false religions. But there are a bunch of like false salvation plans and false religions in the world. So therefore God does not exist. That's like the big final like boom checkmate argument.
So what's your response to that?
So again, I think there's a huge difference between what Schellenberg expects God to do versus what Christianity proclaims God's going to do. Because it has done. Yes, exactly. So Schellenberg's like, yeah, like God just wouldn't allow any false religions to pop up into the world. Whereas like when you're looking through Christianity, like there's just no question about whether or not God would allow it. It's like, here's what God's like kind of up to like deal with this and mitigate this. So it's just wildly different expectations. I'm just gonna die for a second. So yeah.
No, you're okay. That's basically my big critique about this. It's very like, well, like fine, Schellenberg, we're just not talking about like the same hypothesis anymore.
No,
you're like, let's just say you're right. All of your inference lines follow. I mean, good job. You disproved the Teletubby world God. But I thought this book was supposed to be about the Christian God.
Yeah.
Right. That's basically like the nutshell response that I have to this. I don't know if that's too tongue in cheek or like too imprecise, but like the basic idea that I have is just like, no, you're just not comparing the Christian hypothesis anymore.
Yeah.
You're conflating your bare theism in conjunction to your axiology to Christian theism. And the two are just not the same.
I think this is right. If you want your critiques of Christianity to like have some kind of teeth to them, you need to make sure you're accurately describing what Christians really believe. And the expectations you see very clearly in Christianity is you are living in a world where there will be false religions. People are going to have false beliefs. Because the entire premise of God becoming incarnate and revealing himself to us is like, you guys are kind of screwed up, and you've kind of got some false beliefs. So let me like help you out here a bit. That's the entire, like, this is the starting point. And then all these different like parables that Jesus tells about like wheat and chaff and all this nonsense. Like, it's just built in that there are going to be false beliefs, false prophets all over the place from now until Christ returns. And there's a lot of stuff there you could critique and go for it, and then we'll respond to it. But don't go, God just wouldn't allow that to happen. God would never he would never create a world where humans have to like figure stuff out on their own. He wouldn't do that. And I'm like, why should I think a thing like that?
No, 100%. And even so, like, there's another part of this that I think is interesting, because I actually do think like throughout the Bible, there's an implicit axiological teleology of sorts too, right? Where you actually see like a progressive axiology, meaning like throughout the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation, what you see is an axiological trajectory towards the Edenic vision. So like it gives you the Edenic vision in the beginning,
Mhm.
and then you lose that, but then you go towards the Edenic vision, progressing like through ethical lines of scrimmages, right? And it's not like, and we have like what I call in my theodicy book, right? A chronological jump, basically. So you can think about, hence my theodicy being cosmic story, right? Like
Mhm.
the cosmic story starts, we're told what the beginning Edenic vision looks like, and then from there we have this like the story of human history, like a snapshot of it in the Bible, and then we get what the final chapter is going to look like, that I call the Chronos ending.
Mhm.
And it's like this unending final chapter, basically, right? We know what it'll be like, and so there's this blank slate between that eschatological Chronos final chapter and what's left at the end of Christian history in Scripture, right? And in that, it's the analogy I kind of use is like we're kind of like in the unwritten, uncanonized books of Scripture that we're
Mhm.
co-authoring with God right now.
Okay. Yeah.
And we get to basically continue this axiological trajectory in partnership with God towards the Edenic vision. If you can map that from the Hebrew, like the biblical scriptures, all the way to that ending, and you can map this historically speaking with the Christian church, which I think you can, right? I think the data actually fits really neatly all of a sudden too. And
Mhm.
what Schellenberg then critiques as moral progress being evidence against Christianity, with scientific progress and alethic progress in general being evidence against Christianity, is, well, it's actually not. It's actually just totally like in line with what you would expect to see, you know. And this is the thing that I wish Schellenberg would have taken the time to appreciate, is like there's actually like a rich history and rich axiology in the Christian worldview that I wish not only just Schellenberg, but other like atheologians would actually just take a moment to truly appreciate.
Mhm.
I guess that's my.
No, I think this is right to point out, and it's something that like when I'm trying to examine other religions as well, I I'm interested in Islam, I'm interested in Judaism, I'm interested in Hinduism and Jainism and all this jazz. I'm like, okay, there's a lot of like different kinds of arguments. There's a lot of nuance, and I want to make sure I really capture that before I start pushing any of my arguments too hard. Because there's a level of responsibility that I have to take on there, because I see it in my own tradition, my own Christian tradition, of going, there's a lot of nuance here, and a lot of richness and diversity that you need to try to capture and account for. So make sure I do that when I'm looking, give that same kind of charity towards the other religions too.
Yeah,
And I just didn't. I felt like I just didn't really see that in this book.
yeah.
So I was kind of disappointed. Whereas, as all of his other work, I like it. I do. Like I said at the
Yeah.
beginning of the episode, I like it.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Tim, final thoughts on the book, from what you've been observing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it might serve as a good read just to see how certain people are being creative and trying to, do their best to think with inside the internal logic of the Christian worldview and advance
Mhm.
arguments. I think that we should always be up to date with newer arguments, especially when people are trying to do something innovative, right? Outside of that, so I think it can really serve that purpose. I don't really think it's going to serve a purpose in terms of like, okay, I haven't truly thought about my faith until I've read this book. I don't think I should be looked at like that either. I think just kind of being up to date and knowing kind of what's happening there. And then you can be a tool to kind of sharpen or precisify thinking around, okay, could we make particular ways of explicating or elaborating some of these doctrines, the big narrative, right? That was my big thing. What are some ways in which we can cash that out that are going to be, avoid some of these maybe erroneous ways of interpreting what's actually happening there?
Sure.
No, I like that point, because like what I pointed out in one of the chapters on that where Schellenberg is just quoting a bunch of like British theologians, and I'm like, they are saying some things that just seem false on their face. So critique away. So I guess the message for me as a theologian and for you guys trying to do like apologetics ministry is like, don't say ridiculous things. Just don't. Say things that seem plausible and are grounded in reality. Like that's the best articulation of the Christian faith, is to just don't say stupid things from the start, because then you won't like get all these critiques for you know.
And Ryan, added to that, like what would you say about the value of making modest claims?
Okay, so when you're trying to do like analytic philosophy, a lot of times you're like, make minimal claims because they don't have to defend as much. And I'm like, that's fair as far as it goes. But as a Christian theologian, I have to make thicker claims than what your average analytic philosopher wants, because I have to tell a systematic story of the world. So I do want to make modest claims, and the kind of Christian denomination that I come out of is very much bare bones Christianity, where they're just like, we're in Scotland, screw England because they're down, screw them, but screw the Church of Scotland too. Let's go to the New World and just be Christian. Like this is actually how my denomination came about. And they wanted a bare bones Christianity. We don't want to be called like the first church of whatever, like just call ourselves Christian. And so I wanted a bare bones, and that is like my attitude. But those bare bones do have a lot thicker content. So I want to be modest, but sometimes you have to give a thicker story of the world as Christians. You really do.
That's an amazing point. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that is Schellenberg's book. This was fun. This is fun. We haven't done this in a while, Ryan. So
yeah.
You have anything cool you're cooking up that you want to talk about at some point?
The Four Views book that Andrew Hollingsworth and I almost finished editing on the Incarnation. Like, there's some interesting stuff going on in there. I just need to sit down and like put the final touches on it, and then have to create an index for it at some point. I hate that. I hate doing that. Man. I know it's painfully dull. It's the sort of thing where I'm like, I don't want to look at this book anymore. I'm so like sick of it. But that should be done.
I can do to help on that. I am looking for excuses right now, because the internet apologetics world right now is just like, it's Islam. It's all Islam. And I'm just like, but the thing is, it's not the Islamic stuff that like you're dealing with, Ryan, where it's like Islamic, like analytic Islamic like theology and philosophy. Like, I would love that. But no, it's WWE nonsense, and I'm like looking for excuses right now to do academic stuff. So if you please,
sure,
spare change.
yeah, we could do that. And then if you guys wanted to get into some of the stuff about different models of God and problems of creation and all that, like, I've got most of the manuscript up and running. The parts that need to be written are still on. I want to do this. The final sections of the book are supposed to be on why would God create a biological world, and trying to look at like evolution and molecular biology. And so it's going to be my wife and I co-authoring that part. And so it's going to take a little bit longer.
Okay.
But we've already read a paper on it. So it's going to be built off of the paper we wrote on it.
I have some cool thoughts that I've not put on paper on that particular question, actually. So we should talk soon on that.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to sign us off. I have the post Culver's like sleepy stuff happening right now. I'm just tired.
Yeah, it's also I'm gonna go on a jog and hit the gym, and
there you go.
Oh, it's like 7 for you, isn't it?
7:07. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 9:10 for me. I'm tired. All right. Thanks, Ryan. It was a blast having you on here, man. Can't wait for the next time. For everybody else, God bless you all. Peace out.